Good morning, friends. Welcome to another podcast from Johnny W. Bread. Today I'm at your service, as I always am, trying to get you guys to think and perhaps see things in a different light. Humid day in Rhode Island. Nevertheless, I'm a working man and I will begin. Today I would like to speak a little bit about the notion of poverty or handling the poor in our society. Great point of debate and contention in this country is the idea of how much the government should deal with taking care of the poor. And when you discuss basic economics or any paradigm relating to any model regarding economics, people generally are not interested. People's emotions are what govern their decisions regarding economics. And this is unfortunate because ultimately if a model works and it's been proven to work, you would hope that people would follow it as opposed to following something that has been proven over and over again that doesn't work. And that would be like a socialistic model, which the country is definitely heading towards. And that's been proven time and time again in society not to work. But I want to speak from a Christian perspective, since the blog is distinctly a Christian point of view, and how a lot of Christians even don't specifically pay reverence to ideas that are proven, because they always want to look at things through the eye of a biblical model or biblical narrative, specifically how Jesus Christ would deal with the issue of the poor. And that is fine. I have a biblical worldview, and I think actually the Bible is clearly in line with a lot of secular economics textbooks, the good ones, the ones that come from Austrian economics or Ron Paul type of study, or Ludwig von Mises and all of this. But unfortunately, even Christians kind of line up with the intelligentsia and those who know what's best for society regarding how to deal with the poor. But let's look at some of this specifically and see if it's really true. Jesus, when he speaks about the poor in the Bible, clearly the poor were a class of people in the Bible times. And unlike in the 20th century, 19th century, 18th century United States, that was not necessarily so. Our government is set up in such a way so you're in a position where you don't have to stay there. The poor at any given time could change their position. There are thousands upon thousands of Horatio Alger stories in America where people have this rags to riches climb, where they once were poor and then they weren't. Even in the community of the minority community today, which people will say, well, a black person today living in the ghetto or whatever can't climb out of it. Well, that's even been discounted. There was 4 young black men in Washington, D.C. in a very bad neighborhood who one day decided they wanted to create a pact. They did this pact where they all decided they were all going to go to medical school and they were all going to be doctors. It's a fascinating book. You could probably find it. I know you could find it on Amazon. It's called The Pact. And these 4 guys actually fulfilled their dreams, and it wasn't easy. They went through some periods where they were a little rebellious. Some of them had some dreams about being rap musicians. Nevertheless, they all kept each other accountable. They all stood firm, and they all to this day got jobs in the medical profession. And that was being a black male in a very tough neighborhood of Washington, D.C. And clearly, even if you take the notion, well, generally, the blacks, for instance, are stuck in a bad neighborhood, in poverty. You also have to look at other things about circumstances to determine if it's only because of that's the way society is, like in the biblical times, where people just maybe they really can't get out of poverty. They're just there. And as much as I might want to say, have this ideal that they can get out, can they? Well, in biblical times, people who were poor were often there of no fault of their own. They were just in a caste system where they were born poor, and there were really no opportunities to overcome that. Today, even in the black community where there's a lot of poverty, and it seems like there's an inequity regarding whites and blacks' living standards, if you look at black people, blacks who are married, where there's a husband and wife present, their poverty level goes down tremendously. They're almost on a scale of whites. And also, if you're going to say, that it's unfair to be black because blacks cannot always keep up with whites, are you going to say society is unfair because whites generally can't keep up with Asians? Nobody brings that point up. Also, some ideas about statistics. You'll hear this say something along these lines that, the top 1% controls the top, I don't know, 80% of wealth, or the top 20% controls all, these numbers. I don't have them at my fingertips. But anyways, they basically say, they quote these statistics to make it sound like there's this haves and have-nots mentality. What happens when you use statistics like this is that although they are true, they only show part of the story, because they're not actually discussing flesh and blood people. Give an example. Somebody who's in the top 1%, let's say they make $250 million. To us, that's like mind-boggling. We can't imagine. But people of that nature, it's common for them to drop out of the top 1% in a matter of five years. They're not always going to be in the top 1%. For instance, a guy could make a bad investment, and his accumulated wealth from 250 million could go down to 170 million in a drop of a hat. Now, the common man, that doesn't mean anything. Well, he's still rich, right? So we don't think anything of it. But it's still an $80 million loss. And it just goes to show you there's a great risk of being among the wealthy. They're not always going to stay that way. Likewise, people make a comment about the bottom 20% and how it's, there's too many in the bottom 20%. The bottom 20% can't make it. Notions of this idea that the intelligentsia thrust upon us. Well, let me give you an idea why that also is a statistic that's not fixed. After I had gotten out of college, I'm 22 years old. Technically, I'm a statistic where I'm on my own, and the Internal Revenue Service is going to chart my, keep a record of my taxes over these years. Well, right after I got out of college, I didn't find the job I necessarily wanted, so I began, working in a hardware store. I had a job that was over 40 hours a week, but my job was basically making only a little more than minimum wage. I found a roommate, another guy who I'd known in college, and we hung out together. Statistically, I'm in the bottom 20% of the economy. Yet, I'm a very young person. Over time, people's income graduates. In a matter of maybe 10 years, though I certainly don't become wealthy, I get another job, a job where maybe we'll get married, start a family, and I don't know specifically what range I'm in, but I'm definitely well over the top 50%, because Americans, by and large, a lot of them don't make over $60,000 as a family. But even as a single person, if I was making, I wasn't married and I was making $50,000 a year, that would put me in the upper half. So just from being stuck in the bottom 20%, I went up to the top 50. I wasn't stuck. Opportunities arose. And people have opportunities in America all the time to come up with, ideas. A person could be an entrepreneur, a person could be creative, all of a sudden have create a comic strip, go online, do something. People can be successful. So the point I want to make is, since I'm not going to discuss the government's role in helping the poor, which I think is totally erroneous, they have no right to do that, and that might be for another blog. But from a Christian perspective, the poor a lot of times are poor because of decision making. And as Christians, we can be charitable and help people who are desperately in need, people who really genuinely need food, clothing and shelter. The Christians are much more equipped throughout history to invest their time and their energy in than the government would, because we're going to really be compassionate to people. Maybe we're going to have conversations with them. Maybe we're going to prepare them to make better decisions, as opposed to just handing them a check. But we also have to make fine decisions, because today people can get government money. People can get government money, yet we don't look at the wisdom of the decisions. Are they really poor? Are they having trouble getting food because they still got a great cell phone, they still have all these toys? And that can't be. And we got to challenge people on that. Sometimes in a spirit of love, we have to admonish people. Well, anyways, I'm coming up on 10 minutes. My thoughts for today. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, Johnny W. Bread.